Right, good morning everyone, and welcome to this next in the series of PJ Learn from the Best webinar. My name is Matthew Davis, and I'm one of the training executives here at the Academy. It's great to see so many people who have made the effort to come online this morning and share this webinar with us. Today is the third webinar in the series we're putting together with Club Inc. And we'll focus on conducting a personal SWOT analysis. Hopefully many of you will have read the article in the May edition of the PJ Professional magazine, which was titled Boost Your Options by Swotting Up. For those of you who have missed previous webinars, they are available on the PJ Training Academy website. And today it's my great pleasure to welcome back Neil and Sian to the line. We are very fortunate again to be joined by these two people with vast knowledge and expertise in this area. Both Neil and Sian will have had a lot of experience with people conducting SWOT analysis, so it's great that we can all learn something from them today, and hopefully you'll find this very valuable. So let me first welcome to the line Neil. Neil Flanagan, are you there?
I am indeed, Matt. Good morning, everybody.
Good to have you here, Neil. And to give a brief intro to those that don't know Neil and haven't been on the previous webinars, Neil is the Managing Director of Club Inc. Neil has extensive club expertise, which he's gained by working with elite clubs. His most recent role has been at Loch Lomond from 2006 to early 2011. And also on the line we have Sian Davis. Sian, welcome. Are you there?
Hello. Yes, I am. Good morning, everyone.
Good to have you here, Sian. Okay. So, as a brief introduction, Sian's worked as a top FTSE 100 executive and specialises in HR and coaching, and heads up that arm of Club Inc. services. So the aims of this webinar are to offer members the chance to learn more about how they can use a SWOT matrix, how they can help to understand better what they have to offer, their strengths, their weaknesses, opportunities and threats, in order to strengthen their career and their career development. So hopefully this webinar will last approximately 35 minutes to 40 minutes. We want this to be interactive as possible. So for those that haven't been on a webinar before, I must just mention about the opportunity to do questions through the question panel on the screen. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Neil, who's going to give a brief introduction.
Thanks, Matt. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for listening. One of the most important things for us from a SWOT perspective is really just to try and understand and plan somebody's career. I'm delighted that the person that we brought on board, I've known Sian for probably over 20 years, is an absolute expert in looking after people's careers, and has really helped Club Inc. to help a lot of our clients now, a lot of PGA clients, getting more and more every day, to really help them with their career process, whether that's through understanding what their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats are, which is obviously what we're talking about today, or how to brand themselves with their CV, or indeed just looking at their career mapping. So I'm delighted that Sian has joined us today. Sian, over to you now for what I'm looking forward to, and I'll interject a couple of times just to put maybe some golf speak into it, but really looking forward, as always, to understanding your views on SWOT and how important it is for everybody when looking at their career.
Thanks, Neil. Good morning, everybody. What we want to cover in the next 25 minutes, 30 minutes or so is really what is a SWOT and why is it important for you. And then really what we thought would be helpful was to just take each of the elements of the SWOT and to break it down and to just start to think about what you might want to focus on when you're starting to build your personal SWOT. And then what we'll do, I think, as both Neil and Matt said, is we'll hopefully take some questions from you. So I guess the starting point is really what is a SWOT. So a SWOT is, let me get my slides up. A slot. It is also known as a slot, but a SWOT is a technique for basically helping you to understand what it is that you have to offer. And helping you to appreciate what you might need to focus your attention on and what you might need to do in terms of your development. So it's really a technique that allows you to take some time to delve deep into what you're good at, what you're maybe not so good at, what might stand in your way, and then to look at what are the opportunities for you and what are the things that might actually inhibit you. It's great in terms of your CV. It's also great in terms of a development plan and a career plan. And generally, SWOTs are used on a commercial basis. So lots of organizations use them to evaluate business propositions, to evaluate projects, to look at whether they want to bring a product to market. But they can also be used very powerfully at a personal level and important at an individual level, because what it will do for you is to help you clarify what your personal goals are and to help you think about what might get in the way of actually stopping you achieving these. So what you need at the start of any SWOT is to have a high-level vision or a high-level goal around what it is that you want to achieve, and then you use the SWOT basically to evaluate how likely it is you are going to be able to achieve your goals. So your goal might be you've identified a role as a general manager or a head pro or whatever it is, and you want to evaluate how you're set up to secure that role, and what are the things that you really need to focus on in terms of your personal marketing and branding, and what are the things that might get in your way. You might, on the other hand, say, I've got a 5-year plan and I want to do ABC. What is it that I need to do? What are the gaps between where I am currently and what are the gaps between and how do I need to close the gap, between where I am and where I need to get to. So it's really about helping you get some clarity and some focus on how you achieve your personal goals, whatever those goals might be. Where I've seen SWOT used really well is that it gives you the opportunity, if you use it right, to just take some time out and to reflect on yourself and what you have to offer. I think for those of you who've been on the previous webinars, we've talked about CVs and we've talked about interviews, and I guess this is often a tool that will feed in to both those processes. But it's about taking some time for you to reflect and consider, what is it that I really stand for? What am I really good at? What are my core strengths, and how do I work those to my best advantage? The other thing that I would always encourage you to do is to seek feedback from other people. So that is it can be a really helpful process, but for some people it can actually be quite a daunting process. But what it does, I guess, is to give you a more balanced and rounded view. And what it might do is to give you some insight on you that you haven't necessarily thought of. So it might give you some different thoughts around what you're really great at or how people experience you, and it might also give you some ideas around, what are the things that might get in the way when you're interacting or engaging with someone. So what are the things you might need to consider doing differently? The SWOT, I guess, when you're reflecting, will also help you think about what are the things that I really, really am good at. So what are my standout experiences? So when you put together a CV or a branding document, there'll be lots of things that you really cover in there. But what you want to focus on are the things that really make you stand out from the crowd, the things that make you different, the things that just give you extra value or extra sight in terms of people who are looking to hire you. On the other side, what you want to consider is, what are those things that might actually stop me from being successful? And it's not only thinking about those and being really honest with yourself, it's also about saying, okay, how do I actually overcome those? Can I overcome them? What help and support do I need? What might I need to do differently? How can I tip things on their head and actually, really start to focus on some of the things that I'm not so great at, but I need to be good at? And one of the threads that we've talked about on the webinars is your career is your career, so it's all about you, and essentially it's really about investing time to make sure you give yourselves the opportunity to achieve your goals. Take that time out, reflect, consider, and start to craft your SWOT. What I wanted to do before I go into the various elements of the SWOT was just to try and create some common definition around what a SWOT actually is. And that might sound obvious. It's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But what does that actually mean? So when we talk about strengths, what we're talking about are characteristics that give you an advantage over other people. Weaknesses or limitations that place you at a disadvantage. Opportunities are chances for you to improve your performance or to give you additional options in terms of whatever goal it is that you're trying to pursue. And threats are the elements that could cause issues or problems for you. Okay, so let's move on to the strengths. as I've already mentioned, with a SWOT, one of the first things that you need to do is to have a very high-level view of what it is that you're trying to achieve. The SWOT will actually enable you to create a more detailed objective and to create some milestones and to identify factors that will enable you to decide or determine whether you've achieved that goal. But you need as a starting point to just have a clear view of to what your purpose and goal is. Once you've defined that, you can then start to take a look at the various elements of the SWOT. And most people start with the strengths. It's the good, it's the positive stuff. And when you're looking at your strengths, a few things you might want to take a look at are your key achievements and successes. So what have I really done? What was successful about the different projects that I delivered? What particular elements of the roles that I've had do I feel really proud of? And actually sometimes it's easy to lose sight of the things that you've done that are really positive, particularly if they're maybe 3, 4 or 5 years back. We tend to focus on the current, and we don't always keep a record of the stuff that we do. But actually if you just take some time to reflect, consider, or even get input, as I said, from other people, that helps you really identify what your key achievements are and what your successes are. Linked to that is, what am I good at and how does it help me in my role for the future? So, it might be that you just do a brain dump and say, you list out all the things that you're really good at. It could be skills, it could be capabilities, it could be behaviors. So you could say, I'm really good at time management. I'm really good in terms of building relationships and rapport with people. I'm really good at working under pressure. I'm really good at whatever it might be. But it might just be that you take some time and you just download what you feel you're good at. And then what you do, I guess, to supplement that and to really enrich it is to get other people's input. So how do other people see you? What do they see as your strengths? And actually what you see as your strengths versus what other people see as a strength hopefully will tie up, but sometimes you can get some quite useful insight by just asking other people that you've worked alongside or who've worked for you or you've worked for to just share their thoughts in terms of what you're really good at. And the other thing is, going back to the standout experiences, what skills and qualifications do you have that make you stand out from your peers? There's standard qualifications that everybody might have, but you might have chosen to take a specialist accreditation, or you might have chosen to follow a specialist subject or do something that's a little bit different. So how do you really call those out, and how does it actually really help you to differentiate yourself from the rest? If we go back to our definition, it's characteristics that give you advantage over others. So you constantly need to be looking at, what do I have that makes me, I guess, kind of special and makes me different, but really helps me to demonstrate the great and positive stuff that I have and that I could potentially offer if I'm looking for another role or another opportunity to a future employer. Okay, moving on to weaknesses. I personally don't like the term weakness. I always think of it more as development, but it doesn't really work in terms of the SWOT. But the weaknesses is really about, where do you need to focus your time and attention in terms of helping you to identify those areas that might inhibit you from being successful. So I guess the starting point for me is really about, do you recognize and acknowledge that you do have certain skills and capabilities that you need to build and develop? Sometimes it's quite difficult to identify what those are. Sometimes it's very obvious. Sometimes you just know you're really good at something. Sometimes you might say, well, I'm okay at those, but they're not strengths. Sometimes you might say, you know what, actually I'm really poor at that and I really need to focus some time and attention. The other thing is not only kind of drawing upon your own thoughts, but again, it's going back to the idea of getting feedback from people. So when you talk to people that you work with or people who work for you, are there consistent themes in terms of how you operate or how you behave that you think, you know what, actually, whilst I might not like that, perhaps I need to take on board what they're saying. And actually, given that it's come from a couple of people, maybe there is some substance to it, and maybe therefore I do need to address it. So again, it's not only taking a look yourself and self-evaluating, it's also getting some input from others and really getting a more broad-based view in terms of how people see you. I guess when you're looking at weaknesses, there's a number of ways of identifying what those are. But sometimes I think we might not naturally identify something as a weakness, but we might be very conscious that there are things that we avoid doing because you're not confident and you don't feel you can do them particularly well. That's understandable because actually nobody wants to be exposed. Everyone would like to be successful and to feel that they've done things well, but actually sometimes avoiding doing things can mean that you miss out on opportunities and you don't develop and stretch yourself. So, for example, I know a lot of people who don't like presenting and will do whatever they can to avoid having to present. What happens in that scenario, for example, is that actually in not presenting, they don't strengthen their skills, they don't build their confidence, and actually that continues to be a weakness for them. So it's about identifying what your weaknesses are, considering what it is that you need to do to develop those weaknesses, and then thinking about, okay, maybe other people that can help me develop in these particular ways, or creating an action plan that enables me to build that area that is not a strength for me into a, maybe not a strength, but an area where at least I feel competent and able to deliver. Other thing to think about in weaknesses is, do you have any negative work habits? That could be things like timekeeping, how you deal with pressure. It could be a number of things, but again, there are likely to be things that over time, if you don't focus on, if you don't address, could actually stop you from being successful. So being a couple of minutes late or rocking up to a meeting a couple of minutes late might not matter, but you may end up working with someone who says timekeeping is absolutely critical, and if you don't address that issue, that might start to impact in terms of how they see you around organization, self-respect, all those kind of things. So it's just about trying to figure out what, if any, negative work habits you have, and then what it is that you need to do. And then finally, around weaknesses, it's really saying, where do I want to be? What's my career plan? And if I think about my career plan, what are the skills and competencies that I need? Where am I currently? And actually, what's the gap? So, if I want to be a general manager and I'm currently an operations manager within a large club, what is it that I need to do? How do I build that knowledge, skill, and capability? How do I get that exposure? How do I gain that experience? And it's about really trying to turn something that's it's not necessarily a weakness, but it's an area where you don't have skill and strength into something where you do have skill and strength. Neil, any thoughts on strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, that was a really good insight, Shana. I mean, I've just been taking notes, and obviously in the piece that I wrote, one of the biggest things I think people need to think about when it comes to strengths and weaknesses. Strengths, people undersell themselves a lot, certainly when we're dealing with a lot of clients. When we give them our SWOT analysis, they put down a lot of strengths, but it's not reflective in their CV, and that's where we try and make sure that we understand all their strengths. I think one of the key things when coming to strength is that you never stop learning and you never stop taking information. One of the things that I learned from Dick Copeland, one of the biggest headhunters in the States, was that he has a great saying that leaders are readers, and it's true. I've been lucky enough to travel, in the first class compartment of an aeroplane, business class of an aeroplane. Most of those people are reading. They like to learn more, and I think that's really important. So when dealing with strengths, continue those strengths and continue to find new avenues that you're strong at, because other people are doing so all the time. We've got a number of young guys coming on board who are developing their careers, and they're learning all the time. They're learning different techniques. They're going on some of the courses that the PGA put on, and they're always there. They're looking for the extra points, but they're also looking to learn as much as they possibly can. And I think when dealing with weaknesses, I think Sean's, everybody doesn't like dealing with weaknesses and whatever you call it. But I actually say when we're doing this particular session with our clients is that we look at how do we change those weaknesses into opportunities, really going through those, because if you can highlight things that you feel that you are weak at or you think that you need more practice with, One, that's great because you've highlighted something that you need to go and find more about. So therefore, again, it comes back to education. Where do I need to get those resources that can change those weaknesses into opportunities? Whether it's learning about the latest swing techniques, the latest technical facilities that are out there so that I can teach people better, whether it's I'm not really good with social media, so how do I learn about social media so that I can actually brand myself better in order to be able to get more clients coming to me either through my shop or into my bay at the driving range. It really depends. How do you go about learning to change those weaknesses into opportunities for you as an individual for your career, but also remember what we're trying to do with this SWOT is treat you like a business, and at the end of the day, when we're dealing with clients, we look at the end product, which is having a better career, which puts the food on the table, puts you in the house that you want, and puts you in the car that you want to drive. So I think it's really important when we look at that. And so therefore, change those weaknesses into opportunities, and that's a great change over to Sean to go to. What do you think about opportunities?
Thank you, Neil. That was very slick. Okay, so when I think about opportunities, I think of them either as a personal opportunity or a business-based opportunity, and it's really how do you actually maximize the opportunity that might exist for you. One of the things that I really want to start with is it's about trying to keep an open mind. It's about trying to think outside the box. I think we all have in our minds a blueprint of what we might want to do, what roles we might want to have, how we might see our career playing out. And sometimes it doesn't happen in exactly the way that we want. And sometimes it's about thinking differently and looking at things in a completely different way. And sometimes it's about taking opportunities that you think, hang on, where's that going to get me? But actually trying to see further ahead and saying, it's not going to take me the direct route that I want to go, but it might take me in a slightly different direction that ultimately gives me broader-based experience or creates new skills or new learning opportunities that will then enable me to get back to where I want to go. But actually it will give me something different that I don't perhaps have and that nobody else will have either. So it's really about not closing anything down, just keeping an open mind and just exploring every avenue that's presented to you. The golf industry is changing fairly significantly at the moment, and I guess in terms of the opportunities, it's about thinking how that change might affect you and what it is that you might be able to do in terms of shaping actually the future of the industry, but shaping what you want and how you're going to go get it. Thinking also about what sort of experience could help you and what the options might look like for you, but also thinking about some people will be interested in working just in the UK. Some people will be interested in working in Europe. Some people will be interested in working more globally. And it's about looking at how you might grab those opportunities, looking at the different organizations or the different people that you might work with that give you those opportunities and how you best take advantage of them. And one thing that I would always say is I think we recognize that we work in a very demanding world, and that I sense people constantly feel they're busy and constantly feel that they're overloaded. But actually sometimes offering to take a project or an assignment that could craft some new skills and capabilities or give you some exposure might be a great way for you just to build your skills and career in a different way. And so sometimes people will look and say, you know what, geez, I just have too much going on at the moment and I cannot take anything on board. But actually just stepping back and saying, okay, how might I balance this? What might I do? How might that project help me achieve my end goal? Okay, maybe I do just have to take on a little bit more. Can be very helpful in terms of you really broadening out your career, getting new opportunities, taking you to where it is that you want to go. And then in terms of opportunities, I think an area where sometimes opportunities appear when you least expect them is around networking. So how good is your network? How broad is your network? How many people do you have in your network? How do you actually use your network to really help you in terms of what it is that you want to do. And some people are absolutely brilliant at networking and network constantly, and other people aren't so hot at it and only use the network as and when they feel they need to. Really, if you want to enable yourself to always appreciate what's out there and to really build opportunity, it's great if you can to just invest in networking and building your networking skills. And you know, when everybody's busy, I guess it's, gee, that's another thing that I have to think about. But actually building out your network, really developing your contacts, making sure you use every networking opportunity or event to the best of your capability is important. And as I said, some people are good at it, so for some people it will be a strength, for other people it will be a weakness. But it can become, as Neil said, a weakness can become an opportunity, and how you use the networking events that you're given access to and how you use the contacts that you have is very, very important in terms of how you grow and how you want to achieve your personal aspirations and goals. And so coming on to the final part of SWOT, we look at threats, and threats are really the barriers or obstacles that get in the way of you achieving your goals. And actually there could be lots of things, but what I've tried to do is to focus on the 3 or 4 that I think probably will be most common amongst people, and other things that really you can probably address and really deal with to make sure that they don't kind of block and stop you getting what you want. So one of the first that I just want to look at is skills, and I think some people, you know, focus a lot of time and attention on continuous learning. You know, they make sure that they build time into their day. They make sure that they or if they don't build into the day, they make sure that they have time during their working week, or even they might take a concentrated period through a month where they're looking at what are the skills that I need to grow. What do I maybe need to, you know, what literature is out there? How can I learn about the latest technique in this particular area or that particular area? How can I learn about leadership? How can I learn about just the different things and how the market is evolving and therefore what it means? And actually some people are really, really good at focusing on development. Other people actually say, you know what, I'm learning as I go and that's fine for me and that's all I want to do, and in some ways that's fine. Other people just allow skills to become outmoded, out of date, and actually then what that means is that you put yourself in a less strong position because other people around you are focusing on their skills and making sure that they keep things up to date. So it could be computer skills, it could just be leadership techniques or styles. You know, whatever it is, just make sure that you invest time, however you do it and however works for you, that you keep up to date, that you know the latest theories, that you know the latest practice, that you're on top of stuff, because if you don't, that could stop you in terms of achieving what it is that you want to deal with. One of the things that I just wanted to call out is one of the very few things I think in organizational life that is constant is change. And I know from my experience of working with a lot of large organizations that people deal with change in different ways. You know, some people will absolutely embrace change and run at it, other people will resist. Whatever you feel about change and however you deal with it, there is an impact and consequence, and I guess it's just about appreciating what you know, how you will focus on change as and when you're experiencing, and trying, I guess, to shift from if you do resist it to someone who actually resists it but actually gets to a point where you ultimately maybe not embrace it, but you accept and acknowledge it rather than continuing to resist. So dealing with change is very important, and an inability to deal with change will absolutely hold you back in terms of achieving what it is that you want. Technology and technology is constantly changing. Technology, you know, the advances in technology are just amazing. If you think about mobile phones, if you think about laptops, if you think about PCs and where we've come in the last 10 years, the changes there have just been huge. And actually, again, some people embrace technology and they see that it drives efficiency, productivity, it's very helpful. Other people just use it to do the absolute basic and don't use it in a way that actually supports and enables them in terms of what they're doing. Most big organizations use technology pretty broadly. So if your technology skills, for example, aren't up to speed, try and think of how you might address that. Try and look at how you might really build your skills. You don't need to be a whiz. You don't need to be someone who can design websites. You don't need to be someone who can write code, but you do need to have a pretty good understanding of some of the basics so that you can keep up to speed and you can work in an environment which will just continue, I guess, technologically to advance. Politics is something, I guess, that always exists in an organization, whether we like it or not. Some people, again, like networking, are very adept at dealing with politics. They're very politically aware. They're very astute. I'm not saying that everybody needs to become a politician in terms of the environment that they work in. I do think that everybody needs to have a level of consciousness when it comes to office politics and organizational politics. And also it's just, I guess, having an awareness about how you feel. Some people don't want to get involved in the politics, absolutely get that. But I think you just need to understand and be aware that politics do exist and therefore what that means and just what your approach is in terms of how you deal with things. So someone who is who doesn't deal with politics, who just ignores them, could end up finding themselves in a situation which is difficult and uncomfortable, and just they may not be aware of how things are going on around them or the relationship dynamics and the power base within an organization, because they just don't enjoy politics and they steer away. You don't need to enjoy politics, you just need to be conscious and you just need to think, what does it mean? Because otherwise, again, that can be a threat in terms of you and helping you achieve what it is that you want. And then the final piece that I just want to talk about in terms of potential threats is linked to something that we talked about earlier, which is just organizational change. So how do you prepare yourself for change in an organization? How do you make sure that you're set up in the best and most positive way? You know, the reality is that from time to time, organizations will change their leaders, their CEOs, their MDs. They might change whole leadership teams. And therefore, how do you play into that? How do you find your way through that change? How do you make sure that as best as possible you can position yourself to be part of the future? And sometimes you may not always be part of the future, so it's constantly thinking about what is it that I need to do to keep myself current and in a good position? What is it that I need to be thinking about that looks after me? And how do I just deal with some of the changes, and how do I keep myself in a good space? Neil, over to you.
Thanks, Sean. That was really good. Just like to pick up on a couple of points there. Certainly going back to opportunities, what you said about networking, that's a huge opportunity. A lot of the jobs, well, probably we reckon 80% of jobs are not advertised. So that means it comes through people that you know, and it's making sure that you get to know those people. So networking. The next article actually that I've written for the PGA and PGA Profile is about networking, and it's a huge opportunity because you get to meet somebody, and it might not happen overnight. It might not happen the next day or the next week, but there's an opportunity that if you really want something and you feel that person can give it to you, if you can work with them through a networking opportunity, you never know what might come out. Certainly if you read the next issue, there's a certain story that happened to me about how I got the job at Loch Lomond. So opportunities and networking go hand in hand, I believe, and you'll be glad to know that Club Inc. will be running a number of networking events for our friends of Club Inc. So make sure that you all sign up as a friend of Club Inc. Throughout the winter in some great venues at breakfast, and then we'll have the opportunity to meet with Sean and some of our other associates as well. So networking, big opportunity there. I think also create something in the golf industry and learn. I was fascinated to go to the presentation by Ian Roberts about China, and I know there was about 17 or 18 golf professionals there. I think it was a fantastic day. Matt, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here. Yeah.
Yeah, Matt, it was a really good day, wasn't it?
It was. You know, you get those opportunities, as you said, and it links on well to what we're going to be looking at next month. You know, you're getting everyone together in the room that's got similar interests to yourself, and it's surprising how much you can actually learn from, just spending a day of your time actually just talking to other people, finding out their experiences, and I think it's it's a great way to go about things. We've just had one question come in actually, which I'd like to ask. How often should you do a SWOT? Is it something you should refer to on a sort of monthly basis? Is it something you should do once a year? or is it more regular than that?
Neil, do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, you go for that one.
Um, I think it's connected to goals. So I don't think it's something you would do on a monthly basis, because it's going to be connected into, as right at the outset I said that you need to have a clear purpose and a clear goal. So that's what you basically hang your SWOT off. So you start with your goal, whatever your goal might be, and then you work with your SWOT accordingly. Now, you might then decide that you want to set yourself a different goal, or you might have a project or something that you're evaluating and you're thinking about, and then you might do a separate SWOT. So I guess the SWOT links directly to the particular goal that you have. And once you've achieved your goal, I guess to some extent that SWOT may no longer be relevant, but you can always reference back to that SWOT if you want to. But I think it's just it's not something that you need to keep up to date on a month-by-month basis. It's very much goal-orientated.
Okay, that's brilliant.
I would agree with that. On that one, because I wanted to just touch on one thing with the threats as well. I know that a number of golf professionals, that they're having their retainer looked at was obviously as a threat, and I think if somebody actually does a SWOT based sometimes around a threat, it can work, because you really need to have a look at your strengths and then your weaknesses, but then therefore the opportunities that come from that threat. So sometimes it comes around the other way. So, if a club does come to a golf professional and say, don't know if we can pay you that retainer or a retainer at all, might be a good time to do a SWOT.
And it's also a good time to highlight your strengths as well, I would have thought, and show what you're actually doing for the business. But as you say, in times of recession, there's always you hear business leaders, there's always opportunities available. So it is about looking on the other side of the coin. Just going back to the point we made about the networking events, and so we talked a little bit about the day we had talking about China. There's also one of the things I think about the member education program is where you get people together who obviously you're going to learn a lot from the presenter, but you're also going to learn an awful lot from getting in the room with people who, as I said, share the same interests, show they're wanting to develop their areas of expertise in a specific area. So that really is sort of where the learning comes from. And I know you've got a golf day organised, Neil, in July sometime, which is a sort of a networking event for friends of clubbing. So it is important to make the most of clubbing services and to become a friend, because there's a lot of useful resources, and I'm sure they can help you an awful lot. From my perspective today, some of the key points that I picked up was that a SWOT analysis it's not about what you need to do is to be really sort of personal, and not just from your own perspective, but from the perspective of others. Sit down and have a good think. It's not something to be taken lightly. I think you can get an awful lot about it. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Neil or Sean, before we draw today to a close?
If I could just say, I just thought, Sean's an expert on it. I think it really helps us to have somebody like that on board, and it's a very clear part of what we do. It's our first session with career clients, and so it's a really important part. So, for anybody who's thinking about coming and taking career coaching, then certainly from that point of view, SWOT is a must, and I think it's great that we've got that resource. Matt, I think we're going to put this on YouTube, and we can put it on our website.
This will be available. Also, we'll make the slides available on the PJ Member Education website, so they'll be on there hopefully from, if not today, from the beginning of next week. So this will be available for those that they're online listening this morning. Obviously, tell other people about, because as I say, it's a fantastic resource. And I'd just like to say, Neil and Sean, thank you again for coming online this morning and sharing your expertise. As I said, the next webinar is due for Friday, 29th of June. So that's the next date to put in your diary, again for 8:30 in the morning, where we'll be talking about designing your own PR and brand awareness. So they say that the article which comes out in this month's magazine is about networking, and there's some really good stuff in there. So hopefully from today you'll have learned something that you can take away, and it's maybe something where you finish work tonight, you'll go and sit down and maybe start to have a think about drawing up on a piece of paper just your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and I'm sure you'll get a lot from doing that. But it's important to be honest with yourself, because that's again how we develop, and that's how we learn. So as you can see, the contact details are on the screen for Neil and Sean. I'm sure they'd be very glad to hear from you with any questions. So if you've got nothing else that you want to add, Neil and Sean, I'd like to just say thank you again.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, and
Thanks, Matt.
great stuff, and say thanks again to people on the line for listening, and we will see you hopefully in a month's time on the next webinar.